Hello and thank you for joining the Football Diary podcast, where we're here to talk about one of the biggest transfer stories around right now, Newcastle's pursuit of Sandro Tonali. We all know that Newcastle had a phenomenal season last year and managed to break into the top four and get to a cup final. And there's definite needs for improvement in that squad, particularly looking at its depth when it's going to be competing at the highest level next season. An area that Eddie Howe has clearly identified already is the midfield. There's been a lot of talk, of course, of James Maddison being linked in the more attacking position in that midfield. And there was early talk in the window of Nicolo Barella maybe making a move over. But it looks like they've settled with Sandro Tonali. But why him? What is it that he's going to bring to Newcastle's midfield? If you look at his characteristics as a player, it's really clear what role Newcastle want him to fulfil. He will be that number 6 that a lot of the time last season we saw Bruno Guimaraes dropping into. Now, that's not Guimaraes' most favoured position. We saw a very different midfielder at Lyon, but he kind of had to fulfil that role at Newcastle due to the lack of quality in other areas of the midfield. And Guimaraes posted some incredible numbers, and actually, if you look at his defensive stats, outperformed Sandro Tonali in a lot of areas last season. However, the profile of these two players last season in particular is comparable, and it's really clear that that's the role that Tonali will fill, allowing Guimaraes to link up more with maybe James Maddison if he's the more progressive midfielder they bring in, or even Joel Linton in that midfield. The good thing about Tonali is, even though we recognise him as more of a holding midfielder, his passing range is very, very good. If you look at his key passing stats for last season, he was averaging 1.9 key passes a game last season, which is more than Guimaraes was managing from that deeper role for Newcastle. He also managed to lay on 7 assists in Serie A alone last season and 10 for the whole season. It's a player that, even though he's young, comes with great experience. He has a Serie A title under his belt from last year, and that winning mentality is something that a Newcastle dressing room will definitely benefit from. He, of course, has played in the Champions League as well. AC Milan got all the way to the semi-finals this year, so it's someone that will, again, help bring that European pedigree through. It is a lot of money, but what is a lot of money to a club who has everything? In this market right now, when we're looking at Enzo Fernandez, for example, as our benchmark of a midfielder of that kind of quality, going for 120 million euros, is 80 million euros really that much? It's big for Newcastle when we're not used to them spending that kind of fee, but we know they have it right now. And if they are looking to kick onto that elite level, Sandro Tonali really fits the profile of that. He's still very young. He's only 23. He's currently at the under-21 championships with Italy because of the way that registration works with that. But a very experienced player for someone of that age. Comes with a lot of potential, has a really high ceiling, and actually could be that elite number 6 that Newcastle really need. He'll be getting used to a very different league in the Premier League to Serie A. We know that actually he does have a bit more time on the ball. He has a bit more of an opportunity to find progressive passes in an AC Milan side, particularly when you consider that he has Theo Hernandez and Rafael Leao going down one wing for him to provide. And the Premier League will put a more stern test to his physicality. But again, looking at his defensive numbers, they are strong. He is someone that averages about 41 passes a game last season, so likes to be involved in the play, is always there present, averaging around 2 tackles a game as well. And that's very similar numbers to Bruno Guimaraes was managing to post in a really successful Newcastle team last year. AC Milan finished 4th as well. So a really similar profile of where the clubs are at right now, even if Newcastle don't necessarily have the winning European history that AC Milan have. He'll be competing at a similar level. So it's a really interesting challenge for Tonali to take, and actually could really help this Newcastle midfield progress. You trust Eddie Howe and you trust Newcastle's recruitment, because actually, even since the money came in, the way that they've spent has been very smart. There's a certain profile of player they're clearly trying to bring in. With the exception of Kieran Trippier, who is slightly older, you think of Alexander Isak and Bruno Guimaraes as young players who were at clubs of a similar sort of level to where they're unpicking now, but had clearly very high ceilings. And Tonali fits that bill. So if he can bring more out of that Newcastle midfield, he's definitely an upgrade on the likes of Longstaff, Willock. It's something that Newcastle will really benefit from next season, particularly when they're going to be competing in 4 competitions. So a very, very interesting signing if it happens.